On the early evening of November 22nd, 2016, 20-year-old Sarah Butler was visiting her family for Thanksgiving. She was a 2-year student at Jersey City University. She was a bright young woman who decided that she wanted to return home for Thanksgiving. While she was visiting with her family, she heard her phone chime with a notification. When she looked down, the notification came from an app called Tagged, which is a social media app used mostly for dating. When she saw who messaged her, she couldn't help but smile a little bit. She still felt a little uneasy about who had messaged her. When she looked at the message, she noticed it was Khalil, who she had been talking to over the past several days, but was still kind of uneasy and unsure if she actually wanted to meet up with him. They did have a date set prior to this night, but she had canceled on him last minute, but that didn't stop him from continuing to try to get her to go out with him. The message that Khalil had sent to Sarah was essentially an offer of a way to maybe entice her to go on a date with him that night. And she sat there for a minute thinking about whether she should take this offer, she should just call the whole thing off again, and she decided to go through with it. Shortly after deciding that she was going to meet up with him, she asked her mom for the keys to her van, saying that she was going to go out and meet some friends. Her mother didn't oppose to her taking the van to go see some friends for the night, but she told her to be careful anyway and to be home at a decent time. She thanked her mother for letting her borrow the van and told her that she would be home before it got too late. Before she walked outdoors, she sent Khalil a message saying, "You're not a serial killer, right?" As Sarah headed out the door, she turned and smiled and waved at her mom, and her mother, not knowing that this would be the last time that she would ever see Sarah alive. Khalil Wheeler Weaver, a 20-year-old man who worked as a security guard for a hotel and for a grocery store, smiled to himself after finally convincing Sarah to go on a date with him. Now, he didn't promise a night of romance. Instead, he offered her $500 to have sex with him. Sarah Butler wasn't the first girl that Khalil had approached with the promise of payment for sexual encounters. Back in August of 2016, he had met a girl named Robin West. She was 19 years old and was struggling to make ends meet. She also struggled with several mental health issues, and she heavily relied on the income that she got from having encounters with men to really get by. On August 31st, 2016, Khalil and Robin shared a meal together, and afterwards, Khalil took her to an abandoned house where they both spent about an hour, but only Khalil left afterwards. The following day, on September 1st, the police were notified about a house fire. And when they arrived on scene, they saw there was a house that was burnt down completely to the ground. And when they went inside and looked through all the rubble, they found the remains of someone that couldn't be identified due to the damage that had been done from the fire. It wouldn't be discovered until 2 weeks later, after dental records had come back, that the body that was found inside the burnt down house was in fact Robin West, who was last seen with Khalil. During the investigation of Robin West's murder, Khalil was brought in by detectives, and detectives described him as someone who was really calm and extremely helpful. He explained that they did share a meal and went on a date prior to him taking to her house that was about a couple blocks down from where the house she was found at. Seeing that the police didn't see him as suspicious or have any reason to hold him, they had no choice but to let him go. About 2 months after Robin and Khalil had met up, another woman went missing named Joanne Brown. She was 33 years old. She had also met Khalil on the Tagged app and agreed to meet up with him. She was last seen getting into his car, and it wasn't until a month later that she was reported missing. She was reported missing on November 22nd, which was the same day that Sarah Butler had agreed to meet up with Khalil. But it wasn't until December 5th that Joanne Brown's body would have been found. Joanne was found with both her nose and her mouth taped, and the cause of death was ruled as strangulation. Robin West and Joanne Brown shared some similarities with being homeless and struggling with mental health issues and relying on these sexual encounters for their income. The police noticed these similarities and started to fear that they may have an active serial killer on their hands. On December 1st, 2016, which was 4 days before Joanne Brown was found, Sarah Butler's body was located inside a wooded area in the Eagle Rock Reservation. Media stories began to spread about these murders that were happening all around town, and this prompted a woman named Tiffany Taylor to come forward with a story that she had about a man that she went on a date with not that long ago. Tiffany met Khalil on the Tagged app, just like Sarah, Joanne, and Robin, and just like them, she received the same offer that they did. Tiffany had recently become homeless, and she was several months pregnant, which means she kind of relied on these sexual encounters that she was having with men to be able to pay the bills and go to all these hospital visits that were required during pregnancy. She agreed to meet Khalil at a motel that she was currently renting a room at. When he arrived, she came out of her room and got in his car, and they drove off to a remote location. Once they got to a remote area, Khalil stopped the car, and Taylor thought to herself, I guess this is where he wants to get intimate. I guess this is the location that he wants to use. There's not really anybody around. It makes sense. As soon as he put the car in park, he reached over to his side and put on a ski mask and grabbed a pair of handcuffs and handcuffed Tiffany. Once Tiffany was handcuffed, he placed tape over her mouth and then forced her in the back seat. Once she was in the back seat, he got out of the car, got into the back seat himself, and proceeded to assault her. After he had finished assaulting her, he strangled her until she had passed out. Now, Khalil thought that he had killed her, but it would be several minutes later when she would wake up and he would realize that he had not killed her. He had only made her fall unconscious. When Tiffany woke up, she realized, I'm not dead. I still have a chance. I can get out of this. And she started pleading with Khalil, just take us back to the hotel. We can do whatever you want there. Let's just go back there. Let's get away from out here. Let's go back to the motel. Somehow Tiffany convinced Khalil to take her back to the motel. And once they got there, she immediately got out of the car and bolted for her room. Once she got inside, she turned around and locked the door. Once she had locked the door, she ran over to the phone and she immediately called 911. She told the operator everything that had happened. But by the time the police had arrived, Khalil was nowhere to be found. The police at this time seemingly had no evidence against Khalil other than someone saying that this had happened. But it was Sarah Butler's family, who she was really close with, which made her completely different from the other victims, that was determined to figure out who did this. Sarah's sister knew all the logins for social media to include Tagged, and once she logged in and started going through the messages, she came across Khalil, and after reading them, she decided, this is the man that did this to my sister. And she immediately made a fake account, and once she made that, she went to the police to see how she could help in any way of catching this guy. On December 6, 2016, the police and Sarah's sister had set up a sting operation to be able to bring Khalil in and be able to take him into custody. They used her fake profile that she made to arrange a similar deal at a motel that was close by. When Khalil arrived, the police were already on site and immediately arrested him. After the police had arrested Khalil, they searched his home where they found 3 cell phones. Additionally, on his phone, the locations that were on there proved that he was lying about his whereabouts during these murders. They also found that on his internet search history that he had some really alarming questions. His internet search history contained questions like, what chemical can you put on a rag and hold to someone's face to make them fall asleep immediately? And how can you make homemade poisons to kill a human? While looking at his internet search history, the police discovered that he was also looking at the exam to become a police officer. This wasn't exactly surprising considering that his entire family had actually worked in law enforcement. Additionally, during their investigation, the police discovered that Khalil lived a fairly normal life. He grew up in a comfortable home, in a good neighborhood. There was no abuse, there was no neglect. He didn't get into any trouble when he was younger. But for whatever reason, he decided to harm all of these women for seemingly no reason. The locations on his phone showed that he had been at the house that Robin was found at, not 2 blocks down like he had told the police before. It also showed that he left and he came back, and the police can only assume that was so he could watch the house burn down. The location on his phone also placed him at the house that Joanne was found at the night that she had gone missing. Khalil Wheeler Weaver was found guilty on 11 charges, 3 charges of murder, 3 charges of desecration of human remains, 2 accounts of aggravated sexual assault, 1 count of aggravated arson, and 1 count of kidnapping. Khalil is currently being investigated for a 4th murder of a 15-year-old girl named Mawa Dumbia. She was last seen October 7, 2016, and was not found until May of 2019, and she wasn't identified until November of 2021. She had been found in an old carriage home on Main Street in Orange, New Jersey, and the cause of death was ruled as strangulation. Khalil has pleaded not guilty to this charge, and he will have a court date in January of 2023. When Khalil was asked why he did this or why he chose these women, he told them that he saw them as lesser, that they were somehow less than human, and that nobody would miss them if they went missing.